Well, let's go back to one of our top stories now, and that statement by US Secretary of State John Kerry calling for Russia and the Syrian regime to be tried for war crimes. John Cencich is a former war crimes investigator with the United Nations. He's currently the director of the Pennsylvania Center for Criminological and Forensic Sciences. He joins me now from Los Angeles. Good to have you with us, Mr. Cencich. Now, let's assume this investigation goes ahead. These kind of things take years. You of all people would know that. How exactly would this help the people of Syria right now?
Well, the most important thing to keep in mind is that it's not a quick job. It's a criminal investigation, which means that all the elements of the crimes have to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's going to take a long time.
Which brings me to the question, how does that help the situation right now?
Well, if war crimes investigations are taking place, sometimes they have a deterrent effect. And people who are engaged in war crimes and other types of crimes against humanity may stand down. They may be deterred by the presence of an ongoing war crimes investigation. That's often the case, but it may not.
And Mr. Cencich, what's the point of all of this? What's John Kerry hoping to achieve with this announcement?
Well, calling for a war crimes investigation or a war crimes inquiry does indeed have a deterrent effect. It's putting people on notice that this has to stop. I can't tell you what Mr. Kerry, what his motivations are, but in general, that's when politicians and public officials throughout the world call for these types of inquiries, and particularly when you have somebody as serious and as prominent as Mr. Kerry calling for this type of an inquiry, it sends a loud message. And the only way to really get to the bottom of it, to find out were war crimes committed and who gave those orders and who's ultimately responsible, is to have war crimes investigators on the ground undertaking a serious inquiry.
And Mr. Cencich, we've seen these horrific pictures over the last few weeks of the airstrikes and the bombardment in Aleppo, but I was just speaking to a guest there about the invasion by US troops into Afghanistan. She spoke about the airstrike on a Doctors Without Borders hospital in Afghanistan by US troops. There have also been many civilian casualties there. Also in Syria, most recently, the US killed 90 Assad regime troops in an airstrike, and that was during the peace deal. So is America totally within their rights to be solely pointing the finger at Russia here?
As a criminal investigator, I don't get into the political issues. I'm sorry, but I really can't address that. But who points whose finger at who? The bottom line is, when a war crimes inquiry is undertaken by serious war crimes investigators and prosecutors, those political factors have to be set aside. Sometimes one group, one country can be the victim and the perpetrator. In fact, that's often the case. So that has to be sorted out through an investigation to determine who committed the crimes, were they indeed crimes, and who's ultimately responsible. Did people give orders for this? This whole notion of the fog of war. Sometimes things do happen under fog of war, but that's all often a lame excuse. There is a methodical way to undertake a real war crimes investigation and to sort all of this out.
John Cencich, thank you so much for your insight.